But I'm Brent Skidmore, and I'd like to introduce Caleb Brennan, Mark Deljudas, and Sabia Mujtaba, who were involved in our career day this morning. And we thank them for that. And Mark and Sabia are going to talk about the work they have in the show. And Sabia has a chair here, has a small altar around the corner back here. Mark has a mirrored piece here, and another jewelry cabinet here, and a model. I curated the show. I did that just briefly, some background of the show. I thought long and hard about who might be involved in the show and how it might appeal to the 7 floors of this building. All right. So I thought of graphic quality of work. I thought of form quality of work. I thought of color. I thought of painting. I thought of drawing. And in all the obvious things I think of that impede my other thoughts. And then that's what you see here together. And I think what most resonates with me is that the work is very diverse, but it can live in the same room and coexist in an exhibition. So Mark's going to go first, and Mark Deljudas. This is not really doing anything in the room either, so just so you know.
Right, it's just so that she can pick it up on that thing. Jesus, looking around the room, I seem to have the just about the more functional pieces going here. To talk about them in my work a little bit, even with the function, I'm always trying to deal with form. And so these 2 pieces I have in this show. And Brent, thank you very much for bringing me into all of this. These pieces are somewhat sculptural in form and somewhat... what is the word I'm looking for? I always go blank in front of large groups of people. They're good examples of my work, in a sense. Little history on the 2 of them, I guess. Explanation. This I call an amulet stand, which is a jewelry box on a stand. Its inspiration came from walking through the Museum of Fine Arts and noticing an Egyptian amulet, a small green stone carved in about this form. And I've gotten a lot of inspiration over the years from jewelry forms, and this particular one inspired me, and I wanted to blow it up. In the process of doing that blowing up, I made, besides drawings, I made a model, and I do a lot of model making work. And I also did a mock-up in a building material called LVL. It's laminated veneer lumber. I picked a big chunk of it off of a construction site, and it was sitting around the shop, and I wanted to make something out of it, and it was about the right size, and I got just about all of it out of it. That piece is now traveling the country in a show called Trash Formations, excuse me. Being that it was a piece of trash that I picked up and made something. Subsequently, I made 2 amulet stands as a finished piece, 2 different reds, different woods, all the same function and dimensions. The amulet, I'm not sure how many of you know what an amulet is. I thought I'd read you a little description here. A material object, usually portable and durable, worn or carried on the person, placed in a house or among one's possessions, to protect the owner from dangers such as death, shipwreck, lightning attacks by thieves, animals, evil spirits, witchcraft, or the evil eye. To aid him in acquiring luck, wealth, physical strength, magical powers, and to bring success to hunting, trading, battle, or love. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. Yeah. Amulets are primarily preventive, and are to be distinguished from talismans, which transmit qualities from charms, which are magic. You know, it's more of a protection thing than a protection thing. But there's also another question as to whether all jewelry is started as amulets. Did we start wearing jewelry as amulets, as forms of protection? This goes on about all the cultures and all the different forms of amulets that there are. So it's about luck. And of the 2 things that I do in my work, I do Morse code and I do intuitive hieroglyphs. And typically, in dealing with the hieroglyphs, some of the work I just showed to you in slides and such is very random. If you look at my mirror stand, you'll see the hieroglyphs interact with each other, very random. This is one piece where I actually structured it. And I structured it because the Egyptians were known for their hieroglyphs. And I got the amulet idea from the Egyptians. So it was sort of addressing the fact that hieroglyphs can say something. But I actually use hieroglyphs in my work as an intuitive image. The other thing I use in the work is Morse code, and I use that to help structure this. There's Morse code running down in these lines here. And the quotation on this piece is appropriate to the piece, I like to think. The quotation in Morse code says, "As luck would have it." So I try to bring... It's a funny thing. I was reading something on the plane coming here about a piece's meaning being its only function, or its function being its only meaning. That I try to wrap this all together. I try to weave all these things together. It's not just a piece of furniture, and it's not just a stone inspiration. You know, it's what does amulets refer to? What does that bring to the subject? And then the fact that it's a jewelry stand and that amulets might be the original jewelry. So I try to bring that all full cycle. That's what thrills me. I don't know what does it for you, but you want to walk over here and anybody, you know, you can come closer.
You can even get another piece of pizza.
Yeah, and I won't bite, and I'll keep Brent away from you. I didn't show the image of this in the slides, but actually what I could do is a postcard here. Pass this around, and look at the postcard and look at the piece. Now, first I'll give you the story of the piece, and then I'll explain the postcard. The piece was a sketch that kept coming up. Some of my designing comes from these called scribbles that I do, right? But there's certain forms, and they interact, and the same things start to come up and up. And so I've been making pieces from my hieroglyphs, from these abstractions, and I'm starting to see furniture in them. And I'm trying to let my intuitive sense go and develop these things. So this was showing up in my sketchbook, sort of like an arrow going into this, you know, this tabletop, and what kind of happens. It's sort of a reverse energy. Although a lot of times when I work with pieces, I'm looking at the energy from the floor up. How do you follow? How's your eye follow through the piece? And that does it in this piece as well. So drawing it out, I start to get into it. I wanted to do a mirror, and then how did I come about? The arrow part sort of got me thinking about William Tell. Now, we all know the William Tell Overture musically, but that's actually based on a story by von Schilling, 1804, about William Tell and how he came to rescue his people from this tyrant. And so subsequently in the Morse code on the side, I used a quotation from the original story that reflects or references the reflection that the Morse code says, "Who reflects too much accomplishes little." Again, the hieroglyphs are loose. They're referencing different things. Some are used over and over. Some are referencing this actual piece and the like. One of the other things I did on this piece is I did what I call a negative carving. I told everyone earlier that I carved my daughter Ariane's name. I call her Ari, A-R-I. I carve her name into all my pieces. So her name is right here in the front. Though the I looks more like a Y. That was a little bit of a funny discovery, I guess. But it's a negative carving with the lines, the original lines are left uncarved. So I kind of call that a reverse carving. I should be doing more of that carving because I actually like it a lot, but I haven't gotten around to it so much. So the story about the postcard that's going around, anybody noticing a difference between this piece and that? I said earlier that sometimes I keep working on my pieces when I get them back. Well, I shipped this to Chicago a couple of years ago, and it broke in the process of shipment. So I got it back damaged. So what did I do? I looked at it so I could repair it, and I said, well, wait a minute, I wasn't always happy with the piece. And I guess this is my point, is every time I finish a piece, every time, I think you mentioned it, Sabia, you drop it off and it's like, well, it wasn't quite right. I mean, I do this all the time. I'll finish a piece, I'm at the photographer's, it's the first time I get to really contemplate the whole thing. I'm standing there going, well, maybe next time this or that. So I get this piece back. I was never really happy with the base that much. So as you see from the postcard, I changed the base. All right, I like this base better. I don't know. I'm getting a nodded head over here too. The other thing I did was about function, and it's always something sculptural like this. People are hesitant. I think the general public still thinks function first, especially when you're doing things in a furniture aspect. If you're doing something much more sculptural, no, they're not thinking function. All right, so that's the dilemma for furniture is that if you want to express yourself more in a sculptural way, more with content, you got to deal with this function thing that people have in their minds. So what I did getting it back was I put a drawer in it. I redid this because this piece was damaged and the base was damaged. So I reworked those two things. Took them a bit further. Carved the edges a lot. I had not carved the edges, I don't think, in the postcard. So, and this drawer doesn't, Brent, this drawer doesn't fall out, so.
I'd like to thank Brent for inviting me to the show, and Kendall School for having this. It's an incredible show. It really is wonderful. And Mark's right. They're probably only mine and his pieces that seem functional here in that sense of the word, furniture. Oh, yes. That's it. It's really very nice work. I just want to say a little bit about my work that is here. These two pieces that are here were actually at a museum of modern art in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was invited to be in the show, and I made the two pieces for the show. But the two pieces that are here have had many years of fermenting before they got to this place. This particular chair, it's got the Bharatanatyam dancer. Bharatanatyam is a dance form in Indian dancing. And as a young woman, I learned the Bharatanatyam dancing. And it sort of it's taken about 6 years before this chair actually became to be the way it is today. I wanted to, it came actually from a commission piece that somebody had asked me to do like a valet for them to hang their clothes on. So everything has a function to start with, but then it sort of grows to another place. And as all my work is functional, or relatively functional, this is probably the first really comfortable chair I've made. Everything else has been, okay, it's got a flat surface and it's got a back, so you can sit on it but not necessarily be comfortable. But this one actually has cut out areas where you can sit comfortably in a back that actually has a curve that fits your body. But chairs to me have always seemed very anthropomorphic. So they have legs and they have arms. And what else can you do with arms and legs except interpret them as human beings? This particular one, when I first decided on doing the valet for the client, was very simple, but it had 8 arms. And those arms were taken from the Kali, which is the goddess of destruction. And all those arms would have been things that you hang your clothes on. So coming from that place, when I started working with that idea to make it into a spec piece for the museum, I decided that it would just take much too long for the time that I had to make this in. So I redesigned the whole idea. And then when I then designed this piece, this particular back area was going to be a body that was sort of like the old Indian goddesses made of stone that were disembodied almost. Their arms were coming out, and they were broken up, and I was going to try and create a kind of a old, authentic Indian dancer, but lots of pieces missing. And then I realized that, yes, I still don't have enough time to make it the way I want to make it, so I redesigned it almost just at the point when I was cutting out the materials. And I thought, this is not going to work, I don't have time, so I redesigned the back. So the ideas behind all of this is that the dancers wear incredibly bright colored saris. So the saris are not the normal saris that everybody wears in their daily life, but the dancers' dresses have cloth that allows them to spread their body out in such a way that they can do the dance movements. And this is just a way of sort of expressing that on their legs, the way they have the cloth covered up on their legs, and then it opens up into like a fan in front of them. And of course the bells are not carved, they are real. And the hand gestures are the mudras that they have for the dance. I like snakes in my work a lot, so I like to put that somewhere. And this mudra is the snake mudra, like this. And there's the cobra, sign of the cobra on her palm. This one is just a pattern that usually they put either like a ring or some kind of a form, but they definitely paint their fingers and their toes in bright red colors. And this is also very typical of putting dots on their feet. The back of the chair shows the lotus flower, which is again very Indian, and you'll see the Buddha or other Indian gods. Buddha is of course not an Indian, not a Hindu image. It's derived from Hinduism and goes into Buddhism. But the Indian gods and goddesses used to have in their palms sometimes holding the image of fire. So this is where that is reflected, fire and the lotus leaf. And if you go to the back of it, that will sort of show a little more of the leaves and the stepping down of the shapes of the lotus flower. I like using paint in my work, so this actually helped me create a little bit of paint covered over. This is cherry wood, but this is painted on the cherry wood. It's quite comfortable, and whoever wants to can sit on it and try it out.